Mike had overhauled the game engine, rendering his top-down worlds using a more sophisticated 3D graphs renderer and incorporating new lighting effects that he picked up on from the team working on the PlayStation version. When he left, the designers that took over embraced this new artistic direction for the game and started to populate the new game environment with these glowing lights, and then toned down the overall brightness, giving the game a uniquely dark and dystopian feel. The developers also wanted to improve upon the original game's generic mission structure and introduce a new dynamic reputation system to give players more freedom of choice. And in the fall of 1999, DMA Design, with the help of the newly established Rockstar Games, released their second entry to the series, Grand Theft Auto 2, first for the PC and PlayStation, and then later for the Sega Game Boy Color. GTA 2 is one of the more unique and unusual entries in the Grand Theft Auto series. Rather than being based on a real-world city, GTA 2 takes players to futuristic dystopian metropolis known only as Anywhere City, where several powerful gangs maintain control of distinct districts. Players assume the role of a single protagonist named Cloud Speed, who is willing to do whatever it takes to climb to the top of the criminal underworld. Cloud, like the preset characters from before, is a silent protagonist who just accepts jobs and works his way up through the world of crime, but he is expanded upon a bit more in a promotional short film created by Rockstar's marketing team, highlighting his ambition and sociopathic tendencies. Even so, GTA 2 still doesn't offer much in terms of its story, and is designed in a way that lets players tell their own story by creating as much chaos and destruction as possible. The biggest new feature in GTA 2 is the redesign to the mission structure. In each district, players must now carefully balance their reputations between the available gangs, displayed by a colored bar in the top left corner of the screen. If a player accepts a mission for one of these gangs and manages to successfully complete it, then they will improve their reputation with that gang, thereby unlocking more lucrative jobs later on. But if they fail that mission, or coordinate with a rival operation, then the player's reputation with that particular gang will decrease, locking players out of certain missions and turning previously neutral AI on the street into hostiles. This creates a very unique dynamic in GTA 2 that's not seen in any other entry, but it's not the only thing that sets it apart. GTA 2 also introduces a few new weapons to the mix, like the shotgun, some throwable explosives, and the electro gun, that further add to the game's semi-futuristic setting. Other changes include new vehicle upgrades that can equip players with things like front-mounted machine guns, redesigned player power-ups that make things like the kill frenzies clear to the player, and new collectible GTA tokens that can be used to unlock lucky bonus challenges. But other than a few changes and the ability to jump over vehicles, GTA 2 doesn't really do much else to differentiate itself from the original classic. And this became even more clear when the reviews for the game started to trickle in. Critics bashed the game for doing little to innovate from a technical level, stating that the game, especially on the PlayStation, looked about the same as the last one. Others pointed out that the gameplay had barely changed, and the new features weren't enough to hide the fact that it was basically the same as before. So while the initial sales for the game were impressive, with over 1 million shipped copies during its launch period, inevitably slowed to a crawl, making GTA 2 a rare miss for the series. But GTA 2 wasn't the only entry to the Grand Theft Auto series to release in 1999. Around the same time that DMA were working on GTA 2, Take-Two Interactive had begun to make use of their newly acquired studios and the game tech purchase, and renamed the Canadian Alternate Reality Technologies into. This studio was then tasked with creating a series of small expansion packs for the original GTA, and was given access to most of DMA's source code to make it happen, which, as Mike Daly noted, is not really the most stable code to work with. There was only so much that could be added without the entire game breaking on them, so Rockstar Canada decided to instead focus on making mostly cosmetic alterations, and set their expansions in 1960s London. All the assets and UI were redesigned to fit this new theme, and a new story with some simplistic animated cutscenes were incorporated to help the experience stand out. Full development for this expansion took Rockstar Canada a little under a year, and in the summer of 1999, they released the expansion pack GTA London 1969, with a follow-up prequel expansion only a few months later. In this first expansion, players are again given the choice between a series of preset characters, and are set loose to cause mayhem on the streets of London. As far as the mission format goes, everything is handled the same as
think the first thing I'm gonna do this afternoon on this painting is I'm gonna mix some of this pink and go ahead and go over that background again. And so that way, once I get the background done, then I can add more details to the hair, like the little wispy hairs that come off and fall apart, but they'll come over the pink, so I would have to have that pink section done first before I can detail the hair. So let me go ahead, because the shirt is almost done, and if I do the background, I don't think the shirt will get in my way of the background, so let me just do that now. And then by the time I'm ready to come back to the hair, I can just go ahead and paint it, because this pink should be dry. So we'll work it that way. So we're gonna mix that pink. That pink it's actually, is that flesh tone and a little bit of naphthol red and white, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if we can make this color again, because shit. Where's that at? Okay. So it's not. Wasn't this? It might be. Yes, it might have been this. Or let me see. I could just go straight flesh tint, because that's bright enough. Maybe if I just go straight flesh tint, but I do like, you know what? So I love doing the little bit of halo effect, so I will add, where's this, naphthol, and I will use some white, but for the most part, so I have flesh tint, naphthol, and some white, and I'm gonna try to do like the slow fade halo effect. You're gonna need some more white paint soon. Shit. I have this liquid white paint that I've been telling myself I'm gonna use, but I still don't really use it like that. Hey, you gotta have a plan to start with, bruh. Man, you just start running around all willy-nilly, you gonna trip and fall or bump your head on something you ain't even noticed, you know what I'm saying? You gotta have a plan, man. In Call of Duty, we call it a strategy. You gotta have a strategy, man. You still on that Battlefield? Who playing Battlefield, man? That Battlefield 5 was the one they gave us free. I've been playing it. Well, I ain't gonna lie, yo. Like, I've been playing mostly Watch Dogs lately. Watch Dogs, the missions after like 4 or 5 hours of playing, you can already tell like the missions get kind of repetitive. And it's basically the same thing. Go here, hack this. Go here, steal this. And that's it. You know, but I like that because every little, like all the different ways to hack stuff is fun. And I don't know, just trying to be super stealthy and not get caught while you're breaking into a restricted area. I enjoy that shit. And it's just like, it's the same thing over and over. Get into this restricted area. Figure out how to get inside without being noticed or setting off any alarms. Get in there and you're either gonna steal something or you're gonna fucking, well, if you hack whatever computers, you are still stealing data and information. So you're just, either way, you gotta go in there and steal some shit. But right now, I'm enjoying playing Watch Dogs more than any other games that I have. And sometimes I'll boot up the PlayStation and sit there and like all the games that are downloaded, and it's like, so I have like Call of Duty, Battlefield 5, Watch Dogs. What's the zombie game with the white biker dude? Days Gone. I have Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. And then I have something else loaded up there, but like out of the 6 or 7 games you can have on standby, I'll sit there for a minute and be like, what should I play? Oh, Destiny. Destiny loaded up. Destiny 2. And every time I turn on PlayStation, I sit there and be like, oh, should I play some Destiny? Should I play some Call of Duty? Days Gone was getting kind of good. Should I play some more of that? And then it's like, I'm gonna just play some Watch Dogs and go hack some computer systems for a little while. I say that shit is, I don't know, that shit is so fun to me. I wish I could do that shit in real life, yo. And the thing too, yo, these motherfuckers just be using their phones. Motherfuckers will pull out their phone and point that shit at the damn camera. Then you take control of this camera, and then you can point that camera at another camera, and then jump and take control of that camera, and then you can see the whole area, and then you can like set traps, and then you can throw out your little spider bot, and then control the spider bot drone, jump over shit, go through fucking air vents and shit to get the little restricted places, and then if you're running around, man, you need to see some shit, you can. There's like all the delivery and package drones. You can just hack one of them shits. Look at the area you're in real quick. Figure out a little plan. And then if you need to get up high, they got the construction drones. If you can find a construction drone, or you can recruit a character who has access to a construction drone. Use that character, and they can just call that shit whenever, yo. And like, if you need to get on rooftops or something, just call a big ass drone in. You can climb on top of that motherfucker and then just fly the drone up to wherever you want to go. And like I say, after a while, after you've done all of that, after you've like snuck in on foot, you know, as your character, or if you can sneak in using your spider bot, or if you utilize like the drones or the one drone that you can actually ride on, like you can get to do all of that within the first few hours of the game, like the first 4 or 5 hours. Like you've already used most of the weapons, all of the lethal weapons and non-lethal weapons. You can drive all the cars, and it takes a while to unlock all the tech and upgrade your tech. Like there's this for melee attacks, you have like this cybernetic electric fucking brass knuckles. You can camouflage bodies with invisible optics, or camouflage your drone. There are certain drones if you can get enough data points, you can hack more drones, because they have like fucking riot drones with armaments on it, yo. Like some of those drones, them motherfuckers will shoot your ass. But in the beginning of the game, you can't. I mean, their codes are so encrypted, you can't hack them shits. But you can level up, and you can hack the police drones, the ones that chase you when the cops come. You can turn them shits off. The riot drones, motherfuckers start shooting at you. You can just boop boop boop, and now I'm controlling the fucking drone, nigga. I'm shooting your ass with your own drone, and then the cops are security. They'll destroy the drone when it turns on them. So I can kill a couple of cops, and then the other cops will destroy the drone. Now the drone is out my way, so that shit ain't gonna chase me or shoot me no more. Yo, damn, I wanna go play some fucking video games now. Shit. But I need to paint. I wanna play games, but I need to paint this background pink. You see what I'm saying? I'm gonna paint this name pink, man. lot of smoke, bro. Lots and lots of smoke. Damn. Trying so hard not to cough. Oh my god. Shit. Alright. I think I'm gonna have to clean the bong out this weekend. My girl got it for me for a present for my birthday. And so it's been a couple of weeks. So this weekend I definitely need to get some fucking salt and alcohol in that bitch. Scrub that shit out, yo. Alright. So we're actually listening to the history of Grand Theft Auto. So far we made it up to this shit started in 1984, bro. 1984 is how old Grand Theft Auto is, or the beginnings of Grand Theft Auto. The game, the one game that actually led to Grand Theft Auto, and then all of the subsequent titles that came afterwards. And so now they talked about 2, and Grand Theft Auto 2 was the first installment to have like add-on content, and so they added like London, like some London DLC, and they added a couple other DLCs to Grand Theft Auto 2. And now I remember playing Grand Theft Auto, yo, like the top-down version. Yo, that shit was fun, yo. That shit was fun as shit. And I clearly remember the day I seen Grand Theft Auto 3. Like, I don't know. He lying. Don't believe him, guys. Nobody don't believe this dude. He lying. He's a compulsive liar. He's a compulsive liar. But I don't know. I've never been like a really big TV fan. Like my entire life, I've never been like just glued to the TV, except for like cartoons and stuff. So for some reason, like I didn't even know anything about Grand Theft Auto 3. Like I didn't see any advertisements or anything for that shit, yo. And I remember, yo, my cousin, one of my female cousins had a boyfriend, yo, and I was kind of cool with the nigga, and they were living together. I'm hella cool with my family, yo. My cousin, I love my cousin, and me and her, we just would fucking hang out, and she had a kind of okay boyfriend, so it was even better. I'd go over there and hang out with my cousin and her boyfriend sometimes. So I did that shit. Forgot what day of the week it was. I had a job back then, even then, so it had to be a weekend because everybody was just chilling. Everybody was off. Must have been like a Saturday or Sunday or something. I called my cousin's boyfriend, like, yo, what up, nigga? You want to smoke a blunt? He's like, yeah, I'm at the crib. So I go to the crib, go up in there, and he laid back in the living room on the PS. Was that on the PlayStation 1 or 2? What was Grand Theft Auto 3 on? Was that on the PlayStation 1? I think it might have been the PS2. But anyway, he's up in there playing Grand Theft Auto, yo, and dap him up, sit down. I'm rolling the blunt, watching the game and shit. He running around the city, fucking gunning shit down, jumping the car. I'm like, yo, what the fuck game is this, bro? What the fuck is you playing? He's like, oh man, it's Grand Theft Auto 3. I'm like, that's Grand Theft Auto? That, and then even then that shit ain't really click. Like it was the old, like the top down game, like that shit ain't click immediately. And I just sat there and watched this nigga play the game for about an hour, yo. That shit had me fucking amazed. Till this day, like Grand Theft Auto is still one of the games that shit changed gaming, yo. It changed. That shit changed gaming, yo. For real, yo. The open world sandbox. And then as much violence as they put in that shit, that shit was crazy, yo. I said I'll never forget the first day I seen that shit. That shit blew my fucking mind, yo. I was like, yo, what the fuck, bro? And now, like, getting up in age, I've been playing video games since I've been like 7 years old, 6, 7 years old, like, and I done seen so much good shit, like Grand Theft Auto 3, the first Resident Evil, the first installment of Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation. Like, those games just like, what the fuck, yo? And now it's kind of, Driver. That was a good one. That was based in, on the cover, it was the yellow car, like, jumping some shit. Was that in like London too? That was Driver set in America? The first everything, bro. And we done seen, like, for real, honestly, there has not been breakthrough gameplay in a long time. The visuals, I love the fact that the visuals get better and better, and the detailing gets better and better. But as far as gameplay, there's not a lot changed in a while. In the last 10 years, we ain't seen no really new, unless you want to talk about the VR. Now that's the most advancement to game play that we've seen in decades. The one game where you can paint shit in 3D and walk around your paintings, that shit is crazy. Never played it. I watched a lot of other people play it though. The one game Dreams, where you can make a game and create your own shit. That's something different. Even the shooter games, what's that one, Firewall or whatever? It's a 3D shooter, but when you shoot in 3D, it's different from the regular controller, because in regular games, in regular first person shooters, you can only see where your gun is going, and your whole avatar turns with your gun in front of you. But with the VR, you can aim down this way and still look this way. And that makes a major fucking difference. You walk up to the corner, you peek around the corner, put your gun out, but then you look this way and still keep your gun that way, and then look back. Like, that's a dramatic enhancement in gameplay, where your avatar isn't, your visual isn't stuck on your gun. You can place your gun and still look around. That changes a whole lot of shit, bro. That changes a whole lot of shit. Everybody's seen what's that VR movie? Ready Player One. It just takes time. That's all. Like I say, we remember fucking Atari, Nintendo, Sega Genesis. We remember all that shit. Look where we're at now. Okay, that took 25 years. Roughly 25, 30 years from Atari to PS5. And it's a great enhancement. And okay, now in another 25 years, shit is just gonna keep getting better. There's no way around that shit, yo. In another 20 years, 25 years, yo, video games are gonna be just, especially the graphics, the immersion, and what they're gonna be able to do with the VR, and not even just VR, but AR, augmented reality, where you can still see the world, the real world around you, and then have a digital overlay on top of the real world. The Firewall and Resident Evil 7 are probably the two best VR games I've played. Like Resident Evil 7, the graphics, the immersion, like that shit works so well. It really feels like you're walking through this house. It really does. And Firewall, it's fun, but you can see like this is one of the first FPS for VR, and so you can just see like in another 10 years when they just add on to the technology, this shit's gonna get just better and better, more streamlined, more crisp images, and they're just like Sony already announced the second headset. They're not saying if it's wireless or not. I think the second headset is gonna be not as many wires, but still tethered to the console, and maybe in another 8-9 years they'll come out with, you know, the third generation of VR, and it may be all wireless. But you know, the Oculus and the other headset, they're all already wireless. So I was really hoping Sony would just go ahead and do that with the second gen. I mean, because the technology is there. It's not like you can't make a wireless VR headset. You can. Other companies, you know, already produce it. So, but they'll just keep getting lighter and smaller, and a better sound quality and better visuals. Because I mean, the screen is literally like to your face. So that technology for that depth of field is just gonna get better, yo. I really do think VR is like the next wave for gaming. And after a while, like, we won't need TVs. Period. People won't even use like a television set to watch TV on. They'll just pop on their glasses and just watch shit like that, yo. I think more and more TV shows and movies are going to become VR, where every viewer can have a slightly different experience from the same like source of entertainment. So if we're all watching the same movie but it's VR, during one scene I can be looking this way and seeing some different shit. You know, you're gonna hear. We're all gonna hear the same thing. We're gonna hear the main dialogue and sound effects and everything, but during an action scene, I may be looking up this way, and then at that exact moment, you may be looking over here, and you're going to see something that I may not even see. You know what I'm saying? Then I look up, then we both look up, and we're like, oh shit, you saw that? You seen the dude fall off the horse? Dude, no, I ain't seen a dude fall off the horse, man. I was looking at a motherfucker shooting the dude out the train. And then it's just like, I think movies will be have a more unique feel to it once they go VR, yo. What up, yo? All right. I know that's right. That's that good feeling. Like, my nigga, when they get real close to time, motherfucker just be a clock watcher. Like, shit. 10 more minutes, nigga, I'm out of here. Hey, I ain't doing shit else, man. I got fucking 10 minutes, nigga. What you want me to do is going to take 13 minutes. That means I don't got time. I'll do it tomorrow when I come in. First thing in the morning, I promise you. But right now, I'm out of here, bitch. Fuck that. I do that shit in the morning. Yeah, I'm out of here. 10 menos. 10 menos. Alright, like I said, we're going to do some real easy. Something real simple and easy. We're just going to go over the background. Once I go over all the pink, I'll feel comfortable just breezing through the rest of the painting, yo. I feel real comfortable breezing through the rest of the painting. But let's go ahead and do like this little simple part. Sometimes the simple part be seeming boring, but I like it because it's easy. I don't gotta concentrate too much. It's just pink, motherfucker. Just paint it pink. Oh my god.
Library. Today, P.A. Ford Gold Star Library. Today's program is going to promote basic and civic and social literacy as we read and discuss Juneteenth for Maisie, written and illustrated by Floyd Cooper. Now, we always start off asking what you think this book's going to be about. But the title tells us right away. It's going to be about Juneteenth. And I have a special guest here with us today to read our book and talk to us about Juneteenth. This is Travis from Black Scranton Project.
Hi, my name is Travis Prince. I'm the Executive Art Director for the Black Scranton Project. I also host a local art TV show that focuses on other artists here in the Northeast PA region. And I am a program assistant at Outreach Center for Community Resources. I'm so happy to be here today with you guys to read the story to you.
All right, so let's read the book and find out what Juneteenth is. And then if you have any questions along the way, feel free to comment them, and we will do our best to comment back with answers for you.
Hope you guys enjoy the story. Today we'll be reading Juneteenth for Maisie, written and illustrated by Floyd Cooper. Juneteenth for Maisie. Maisie wants to play outside, but it's too late. It's getting dark, Maisie. It's time to go inside. Maisie wants a cookie, but it's time for bed. Not now, little one. It's too close to bedtime. Maisie wants to stay up late, but she's too little. Bedtime is the rule, sweet girl. Hey, man, once again, I just say, man, don't talk about it, man. You gotta be about it. You gotta do shit, man. Do shit for the community, do shit for the kids, man. Read some stories to them, whatever it takes. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it takes. This the lady work at the library, and she said, I want to teach people about, because for some reason, ever since the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre and race riots, it seems like everybody, like there's another segment of America that wants to be woke now, and people are like, oh, I never knew about that, I never heard of that, and I'm like, yeah, that's fucked up that you never heard of that. You know what I'm saying? White people think black people have been shorted. No, you've been shorted a lot of information too. And so, and now that it's Juneteenth, people are like, oh, well, what is Juneteenth? I hear a lot of people talk about Juneteenth. And so she just honestly wants to learn and educate, you know, the kids and stuff. So she was like, oh, we have this book about Juneteenth. And she was like, I was going to read it, but I'm white as fuck. And she was like, I think it'd be better if, you know, like a black person read this story. Could you please just read this book for me? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to read this book for you to your kids, yo. Be that strong, dominant, positive, black male role model that these kids need to fucking see. Hey, they ain't got to see all this, you know what I'm saying? But if you can show them the possibilities, you know what I'm saying? That's all you got to do, man. Take a look, it's in a book of Reading Rainbow. I can go anywhere with friends to know and ways to grow with Reading Rainbow. One of my favorite shows as a kid, yo. And they just read books to you. Always, y'all know I'm the book guy. I love that shit. You want me to read a book to the kids? Hell yeah. Where you want to meet me at? You got the book with you? Cool. Let's do this. You gonna record this shit? Fantastic. So I read a little book about Juneteenth.
And they never forgot the moment they heard, the moment that changed their lives forever. But things weren't perfect. Black people still struggled to stand shoulder to shoulder with white people. They still weren't treated as equals. It isn't easy. It wasn't easy, but they never gave up. And every year on Juneteenth, they remembered.
Gotta read the kids, man. Oh, the electric company. Yo, this our Black Scranton chat log getting ready for Juneteenth. Yo, we been here this bitch talking all day, back and forth. I actually went in so we pre-set up our tent, yo. Cause we got this big ass tent, but we weren't sure if we just wanted to know if, like, to make sure we know how to set it up. So we just set it up inside, cause our center is so fucking big, bro. We could just set a whole tent up in that bitch. But we got that shit together, and we're just gonna leave it up inside until Saturday morning. Then we can just take it apart piece by piece and then bring it outside. But it's a big ass fucking tent frame, yeah.
Definitely.
Yo, tent frame big as shit. It's 30 by 10 feet. Getting shit ready for the Juneteenth Jubilee. Our block party, man, we gonna show the fuck out. Watch. We're gonna show the fuck out, bruh. And that what Juicy J be saying? Oh, and too, man, I got I downloaded Royce the 5'9" album. He put that shit out last year. That shit was called The Allegory. Oh my god. Oh my god, yo. That shit, bruh. Man, hey, if y'all ain't got that Royce the 5'9", The Allegory, man, y'all slipping, bro. I've been slipping. That shit been out since last year. I was like, Royce the 5'9" got an album? Let me listen to this shit. Oh my god. And then he got the dude, I think he from Florida, yo. I can't never remember this nigga name. But a black dude with dreads, got gold grill, his whole face is tatted up. He wear gold chains all the time. But he got his kids, yo. He got 3 kids, like 2 sons and a daughter. And he be having them up on their knowledge. and be having them with guns and shit, yo. If you ever see the little memes of like the chubby fat black dude and be having his kids with guns, yo, that nigga. Yo, he popular as hell, yo. And I remember I was watching some of his YouTube shit. He was like, man, they're a building right here in Florida, man. They want $1 million for this old school building. We can buy this shit and turn it into our own school. All I need is one other person to go half, nigga. He like, I got $500,000 cash right now, nigga. $500,000 in cash now. All I need is one partner to come half with me, and we can buy this school, open this shit up, yo, and teach the kids what we want to teach them. But on that album, yo, Royce da 5'9" got a lot of little snippets from his videos. Like, the album starts off with that dude talking to his daughter, and then throughout the album, he got other little snippets like as skits. And I'm like, I wonder, did he pay that dude for that shit? I mean, cause it's like all his shit on YouTube, but I know he paid him for that shit. Then on one track, yo, he shout out like 15 people. Motherfuckers like he really respect. He was like, y'all the motherfuckers who inspire me, yo. He spit like 15 fucking names out, yo. It's like Big L, Nas, Dave Chappelle. I can't think of everybody who would call out, yo, but he called a lot of motherfuckers out, yo. And the album go hard, man.
Original title. Players accept missions from red telephones and run amok downtown, gunning down targets, smashing cars into lines of pedestrians, and fleeing from the police. Only everything has been repurposed to fit within the game's new British backdrop. The AI traffic, for example, will drive on the opposite side of the road. Icons for weapons like the machine gun are redesigned to resemble British variants like the Sten SMG. And all the vehicles are now modeled after classic British vehicles from that era, including iconic double and triple decker buses. It's a pretty cut twist on the original format, but the cosmetic changes weren't enough to sway critical reception. The expansions were criticized for their lack of actual improvements to the core gameplay, and focused on the game's incredibly outdated visual design. And even though it still provided the same enjoyable experience as the other two titles, it didn't offer enough to grab their audience's attention, which was made evident by the significantly lower sales numbers. Even so, the development team behind the expansion weren't done quite yet, and a few months later released the follow-up, GTA London 1961. The second expansion offered several new vehicles and missions, along with a few minor gameplay improvements, including an option to upgrade cars with armor plating and the ability to perform drive-bys. But aside from those few add-ons, it too failed to innovate, and ultimately was released as a free download on Rockstar's website, exclusively for the PC player base. GTA 2 and the GTA London expansions that released alongside it demonstrated that brand recognition wasn't enough to deliver the same success they had experienced previously, and it was now up to DMA Design to reinvent the series and keep it from fading into obscurity.
So what they did after that, yo?
Following the lukewarm reception of GTA 2, the studio's founder, Dave Jones, decided that it was time to step down. Take-Two were now in a position to fully acquire DMA Design, and he knew that if he stayed, he would likely be stuck working on Grand Theft Auto games for the rest of his career, something that he was already tired of working on. So he resigned in 1999, and later became the head of a new Dundee-based game development studio called Real-Time Worlds in 2002. Replacing Dave as DMA's lead project director was Leslie Benzies. Leslie was another self-taught programmer that joined the Dundee office in '95 to work on an N64 game called Space Station Silicon Valley. This game was a real test for the team involved, as all the developers responsible were brand new to the studio and were working with tech that they had never worked with before. But even though they came together to deliver a unique and charming experience, and the end result was well received by critics. But more importantly, Rockstar were impressed with what Leslie and his team had managed to accomplish, and tasked the group with tackling the next mainline entry to the Grand Theft Auto series, built to take full advantage of the upcoming PlayStation 2. To accomplish this, Rockstar secured an extended license to use Criterion's new game engine, RenderWare, that had proven more than capable in the 2000 game Burnout. But on Burnout,
Burnout, I
DMA
remember
were
that.
faced with the daunting task of cramming all the complex city simulation associated with the top-down GTA series into a fully realized 3D world, without tipping over the memory limitations of their PS2 dev kits. They first started by planning out the general layout of the city, beginning with the basic geometry and roads, and then erected simplistic city structures to try and approximate the level of complexity that they're dealing with. Then, Leslie, together with programmer Adam Fowler and lead artist Aaron Garvin, came up with an ingenious streaming solution that effectively streamed the environment off the CD around a fully rendered polygonal object, in this case, a car. By doing this, they could circumvent the obvious memory limitations of the console itself to allow players to traverse through a massive open-ended environment almost seamlessly, a discovery that would inevitably influence the design of every GTA game moving forward. Now that they had the streaming method in place, the developers then began to populate the world with even more detail, modeling out tons of cars, designing weapons, and testing out the general player movement and controls. Meanwhile, a team of writers, including Dan Houser himself, penned the game's script, which would fundamentally transform the identity of the series. With the first few games recognized today as the 2D era, the plot felt disjointed from the gameplay experience, with mundane mission objectives having almost nothing to do with each other. But thanks to the new mocap studio DMA had purchased previously, GTA 3 would be the first entry in the series to feature fully voiced and motion-captured cutscenes, adding substantially to the game's general tone and feel. They even hired a few big actors to take on some of the game's characters, including Robert Loggia, Frank Vincent, and even rapper and songwriter Keith Guru. In the final years of development, things became even more hectic. The art direction underwent a number of major changes, with early builds of the game having more of a bright and colorful, cartoon-like quality to them. But this later changed to accompany the game's darker story tone. And new visual effects like rain and trail blur were introduced to help give the game a unique visual flair. In June of 2001, DMA took an early build of the game to the Electronic Entertainment Expo in Los Angeles, eager to show off the exciting new title that they had been working on. But to their dismay, audiences didn't seem all that interested in what they had to offer. It was almost as if people had forgotten about the Grand Theft Auto series entirely, and instead flocked to booths showing off new games like Metal Gear Solid 2, and a completely different Rockstar game called State of Emergency. Following this disappointing trade show debut, DMA returned home determined, knowing full well that what they had to offer was far more exciting than anything that was shown at E3. Then, just as they were getting ready to ship the game worldwide, tragedy struck, with the September 11th terrorist attacks in the United States. The attacks were not only emotionally devastating for the company, but even directly impacted Rockstar's headquarters in New York, as they were forced to vacate the building for over a month. What's more, investors started to worry that GTA 3's parody of New York would now come off as insensitive, forcing DMA to make several minor cosmetic alterations at the last minute, including remodeling the emergency response vehicles, disabling projectile collision with prop planes at the airport, and even adjusting the city skyline to avoid any coincidental imagery. They even were forced to submit a new design for the game's cover art, resulting in the iconic comic book collage that the series continues to use to this day. Finally, after several years of development and an unforeseen last-minute delay, Grand Theft Auto released in October of 2001, exclusively for the PlayStation 2, with PC and Xbox ports releasing in the years that followed. Grand Theft Auto 3 brings players back to Liberty City, with an entirely brand new storyline completely unrelated to the original 2D era games. Players assume the role of a silent protagonist named Cloud, not to be confused with the character with the same name in GTA 2. In the game's opening cutscene, Cloud participates in a bank robbery with his girlfriend Catalina. But before he gets the getaway car, Catalina double-crosses him, leaving him for dead in the alleyway. And he's stabilized by the police and subsequently sentenced to 10 years in the Liberty City Penitentiary. A few weeks later, while en route to serve his sentence, the prison convoy holding Cloud is ambushed by the Colombian cartel, who kidnap one of the prisoners and then destroy the bridge with an explosive, cutting off access to the central island. This is where the game begins, and players are given full control of Cloud, and kick off their journey through the criminal underworld of Liberty City to not only earn some cash, but exact revenge on Catalina. The game's core structure is eerily similar to that of the original GTA, with players taking on jobs for the Italian mob, and then quickly escaping to the next area when things get too hot. But thanks to the new animated cutscenes, there's substantially more weight to each of the game's missions, adding actual personality to the various crime bosses that players are forced to interact with.
I see nothing but good things for you, my boy.
Memorable characters include Cloud's friend 8-Ball, who accompanies Cloud during their initial prison break, Don Leone and his wife Maria, the crooked cop Ray Machowski, and the egocentric billionaire Donald Love, that has a bit of an interesting appetite. Like GTA 2's level environments, Grand Theft Auto 3's Liberty City is oozing with personality. From its absurd billboards and posters, to ridiculous things pedestrians will say as the player passes by.
My mother's my sister!
Everything about GTA 3's world is purposely built to parody how the media portrayed American society in the early 2000s, with things like violent crime, prostitution, and corruption being a common attribute of the city's inhabitants. What really drives home the game's satirical nature, though, are the radio talk shows, especially the station Chatterbox FM, where real-life radio talk show personality Jeffrey Laszlo Jones not only plays a fictional version of himself, but co-wrote the script with Dan Houser, establishing a lot of the series' signature American cynicism.
Okay, and speaking of impossible, Jane from Cedar Grove is...
It was regular. Well, you know what? Actually, it was kind of fucked up, yo. All the way to the end of the day, I was supposed to go by and check out this spot where somebody wants me to put some art at, and I'm trying to find the address, and I'm on the block where it's at, and then I'm pulling up, yo, and I fucking rubbed the goddamn curb, yo, and I fucking burnt my rim, like. Oh, yo, my rim is like chewed the fuck up on like one little part of it, and the tire just is like. And I just washed my shit too, yo. Just washed my shit yesterday, and then today I fucking rubbed the fucking curb hard as shit, yo, hard. I'm like, yo, chewed the shit out my fucking rim, yo. My God, yo. Trying to look for the fucking address and pull over at the same time. Pull over too much, man. Son of a bitch. And then immediately, I'm mad now. Now I don't even want to go in this place. And I still ain't see it, yo. That shit pulled me up in front of the comic book store. But it's like, it's not the comic book store. I'm looking around, looking up, and I was like, you know what? I'm too mad to even really find this place, man. I sat in the car for a minute and was like, Lexus rims. Start Googling that shit, yo. How much they're Man, the cheapest rims I could find, man, it's just $365 a piece. I'm like, damn. I spent $1,200, man, to get a new set of rims. But, whatever, man. There's something else. It's always fucking something. I swear to fucking God, yo. And ain't nothing but cosmetic, but still just like, fuck, yo. Fucking chewed my goddamn rim up.
Always something. Always something.
All right, Liberty City, this is your talk radio show Chatterbox, where your opinion matters. Let's go to the phones. Hello, caller, you're on Chatterbox.
Hey, you ever had possum? That's some good eating.
Nah, I really can't say I have.
Well, you ought to try it sometime. I tell you, man, it's good eating. Possum, raccoon, even zebra meat. It cooks up pretty good.
Do you have anything else to say, or?
Pigeons. Pigeons are good, too. Sometimes they come with notes attached, just like a fortune cookie with wings. Squirrels is not as good. They taste like goldfish. Meat's real stringy. You know what I mean?
Actually, I can't say that I do. But if I did eat too much squirrel and put on a few extra pounds, I'd use the Dormatron. Unlike those other exercise machines that require you to be awake, the Dormatron actually exercises you overnight. Let's learn a little bit more about it.
I've tried everything, and I just couldn't keep those extra 200 pounds off. It started to affect my marriage.
She was too big for me. Then I'll sleep with anything.
The abdominal Matrix, a Biocize, a tummy stapling. I've had my mouth sewn up, my hands chopped off. You name it, I've tried it.
Yeah, except for exercising and eating right, Porky.
That's right, honey. Then I found the Dormatron. Using a new technology called biorhythmic subconscious gymnastics, the Dormatron exercises you while you sleep. Just strap in your arms and legs, put on the Dormatron headset, then wrap yourself in this special high-voltage electric blanket. Turn it on to 11 and burn those pounds away while you have a relaxing night's sleep. Now that I've lost 280 pounds, my husband's all mine again.
That's right, honey. No more escort services for me. Don't be fat a day longer than you have to. Remember, being fat can even ruin a romantic cruise. Call Dormatron now at 1-800-SLEEP-OFF-LARD or visit www.sleepofflard.com and sleep your way to a thinner, happier you. I'm a marketing manager who lives in the suburbs and commutes to work on the highway. I live alone, so of course I needed a car that could seat 12 and is equipped to drive across Arctic tundra. It just makes me feel good.
The new Maibatsu monstrosity. Mine is bigger.
Oh, well, that's a good commercial. I love commercials, don't you? This is Chatterbox. We are taking your calls right now. Hello, caller. You are on the air.
Hi, Laszlo. Is that your real name?
Huh? Of course it's my real name.
Are you Hungarian?
No, I'm from upstate.
Are you sure that's not a fake radio name like Andy or Bobo? I thought all those radio people had fake names.
Do you have a question or you just want to sit here and talk all day about my name?
No, that's it. Love the show, Laszlo. Or Mark, or John, or Beverly, whatever your name is.
All right, next caller. You're on Chatterbox. What is on your mind?
Turnips, root vegetables, albino carrots as they're known back home.
Okay, here's the deal. This isn't Gardening with Maurice. That's on later.
No, he got taken off the air. He lied. I know he did. I've been trying to make a hybrid of a peach and a Pekingese midget fighting bitch for the last 2 years, and it is impossible. Impossible, I tell you.
Okay, and speaking of impossible, Jane from Cedar Grove is on the line, and she wants to talk about how difficult it is being a parent today. Hello, Jane.
Hi, Laszlo. I love the show. I'm a first-time caller. I wanted to say something about these video games. They are warping our kids' minds. My son's dog, Bugle, got hit by a truck, and he's...
Yo, that was 2001 Grand Theft Auto. Yo, Grand Theft Auto's been dope for so long. Like,
Ryan wants to talk about how difficult it is being a parent today. Hello, Jane.
Hi, Laszlo. Oh.
Hi, Laszlo. He just ride around the city listening to fucking stupid-ass talk radio, even on,
Seen this space-age roofing product that lowers energy bill.
Like I say, it's Grand Theft Auto just set the trend for so many games. Like, when I play Watch Dogs, it's the same thing. You drive around and listen to the radio in the car, and they got some funny-ass talk radio shows on there, and sometimes I'll just let it sit so I can hear all the talk radio that they put on the fucking game, yo.
Out solar panels or batteries.
Shit, though.
Say something about these video games. They are warping
I've done
our
that
kids'
time and
minds.
time for
My
Grand
son's
Theft
dog,
Auto,
Bugle, got hit by a
fucking
truck, and
Vice
his
City.
mommy was
Just
the
turn it to like that, the old school station and just listen to the songs on that shit, yo.
I love that button.
But despite its major improvements, GTA 3 is still fairly lacking in the story department, with each character's personality being wholly attributed to common stereotypes. That again is deliberate, but doesn't necessarily make for the most engaging narrative experience. But remember, this was 2001. The idea that a game could deliver deep and well-crafted storylines was not at all in the norm, especially not in the action-adventure genre. Instead, GTA 3's true strength lies in its revolutionary open-world gameplay design, with a highly immersive world to explore, along with plenty of reworked gameplay mechanics and missions to help populate it.
Exactly.
Thanks to the effort of programmers at DMA, Grand Theft Auto 3 is the first entry in the Grand Theft Auto series to feature a dominant third-person perspective, positioning the camera behind the player model rather than above. Though, if players want, they can still swap to a top-down viewpoint if they're feeling nostalgic. To make the most out of this new perspective, GTA 3 also features a more believable game world to play in. This interpretation of Liberty City isn't just a jumbled mess of streets and buildings like before, but rather a living, breathing world, enhanced using a full day-night cycle and randomized weather effects. The city is broken up into 3 districts that each have a distinctive look and feel. The first district is Portland, an industrial lower-class area based heavily around New York City's Brooklyn borough. Here, players will experience the seedy criminal underworld at its worst, with gangs like the Italian mob engaging in open warfare with the neighboring triads, while hookers and pimps roam the red light district. The second area, only accessible after completing enough missions, is Staten Island. This is the city's business district, built to resemble New York's Manhattan Island. Here, there are towering skyscrapers, a football stadium, a casino, and a shopping mall that all serve as a backdrop for yet another criminal rivalry, this time between the Yakuza, the Jamaican Yardies, and the Colombian Cartel. Finally, there's Shoreside Vale, where Liberty City's elite reside, with white picket fences, swimming pools, and high-end mansions. Together, these three districts, along with the added verticality, make for a much more intricate and complex game world, making it much easier to get lost within it. So, to help players find their way, GTA 3 also introduces the radar to the player's heads-up display that shows the player's position relative to nearby streets, along with any relevant map markers to help locate new objectives. To traverse through these worlds, players can catch a train and walk around, or more practically, steal any automobile they see and drift around the city streets. Driving in GTA 3 is a big improvement over the 2D titles now that players can see more than 20 feet in front of them. Though this new perspective also brings with it a more realistic physics system, with vehicles that can tip and roll, causing them to spontaneously combust and explode if the player isn't careful. All the vehicles you'd expect can be found across the streets of Liberty City, like sedans, sports cars, and trucks, many of which will only spawn in specific areas to add to the simulation. Though, if a player wants to, they can now deliver their favorite stolen vehicle to their personal garage at a marked safe house, and then save it for later use. GTA 3 is also the first entry in the series to allow players to pilot boats and airplanes. Though the only drivable plane, the Dodo, can be challenging to keep airborne with its clipped wings. GTA 3 also sees a total overhaul to its on-foot character movement. Gone are the awkward tank controls from the past, replaced by a much more modernized control scheme, where the left joystick can be used as the character, while the right joystick can be used to control the camera when in a locked first-person perspective. GTA 3 also is the first entry to introduce a sprint key, giving players an extra speed boost to evade danger, though it can only be used in short bursts at first, with Cloud getting tired and slowing down after a short while. The increased verticality of the level environments, coupled with the ability to control the camera, also plays a big role in how the combat is handled. Enemies won't just appear directly in front of the player after all, so a new aiming system has been implemented to account for this. For console players, the default aiming system utilizes a lock mechanic that can swap between targets within range of the equipped weapon. And on PC, players can make use of a new free aim system, allowing for even more precision. Weapons in GTA 3 include classics like the pistol, assault rifle, flamethrower, and rocket launcher. Though there are newcomers like the Uzi that can be used to perform drive-bys, a shotgun for close quarters, a fully auto M16 and sniper rifle, both powerful enough to dismember enemies, and throwable weapons like Molotov cocktails and frag grenades, useful for destroying vehicles and taking out hostiles hiding in cover. These weapons are gradually unlocked throughout the course of the campaign and can either be picked up off the ground like before, or purchased from any of the available ammunition gun stores throughout the city. Though, players need to be careful not to be oxygen or kill, as all of their collected weapons can still be removed after they've been booked by the police. The police system has also seen a big change with the leap to 3D. Like before, causing mayhem will attract the attention of the local authorities, giving the player a wanted level. Only the max wanted level has now been increased to 6, with more nuance to each level leading up to it. At 1 star, the police are pretty easy to get away from. They won't actively spawn looking for the player, and instead will run up and try to arrest the player if they happen to be in the area. At 2 and 3 stars, the police become much more aggressive, and will actively drive around searching for the player, and will also open fire when possible. By the time the player reaches 4 stars, the SWAT teams are called in, who are much more heavily armored and carry automatic weapons. Roadblocks begin to pop up more regularly, cutting off key roads, and trying to escape on foot is practically impossible. If the player somehow manages to survive this, then they'll need to contend with the deadly FBI at 5 stars. And finally, upon reaching the maximum 6 stars, the Army will drive in big military-grade transports and armored tanks. It's a far more robust system, and probably one of GTA 3's most fun mechanics to toy around with, as escaping from higher wanted levels can be quite the challenge. To do so, players need to evade the police long enough for the stars to disappear.
Yeah, that was how we played.
Levels, it can be extremely difficult due to the sheer.
That's how we figured out how to make GTA a 2-player game. You just play one at level and get the stars. And so we see who get the most stars. When you die, nigga, pass controller. It's all mayhem. Like, man, let me play too. Like, nah, nigga, I'm playing right now. Well, shit, let's do the fucking cop chase. Get stars, nigga. As soon as you die, it's my turn. You see them tanks come. Shit start getting kind of tricky. Should be tricky when them tanks come up.
First responders on the streets. But it's still not possible, thanks to the returning police bribe tokens and pay and spray stations, along with the increased verticality of the level structures that allow for some creative gimmicks. All these updated mechanics greatly transform the Grand Theft Auto experience, with more exciting car chases and gunfights throughout a densely populated city environment, providing hours unscripted chaotic action. Though there's still plenty of structured content to enjoy as well, including over 50 mainline story missions, each more challenging than the last. Along with the many main story missions, there's several optional side jobs to participate in as well. These include payphone missions, that are typically simpler but don't advance the story, off-road missions that have players driving through checkpoints on uneven terrain to beat the clock, and RC missions that have players destroying target vehicles using a little RC car. Then, of course, there's the vehicle-specific missions that will activate when entering a specific service vehicle. Jumping into a taxi, for example, will give players an opportunity to make some extra cash completing taxi fares. Entering a fire truck lets players drive around putting out fires, and getting into a cop car lets players complete vigilante missions, where the player is given a target to kill within a time limit. GTA 3 also sees the return of environmental collectibles, only this time in the form of hidden packages. There's 100 of these packages hidden around the city, often in hard-to-reach places, and collecting enough of them will unlock instant access to weapons and armor, available at the player's safe house. Collectively, Grand Theft Auto 3 is a massive improvement over the arcade top-down predecessors. Everything from the game world, the story design, the combat, and the driving have all been redesigned to take full advantage of the new camera perspective. And the result is an experience that completely transformed not just the Grand Theft Auto series, but the entire gaming industry.
Exactly.
The game soared to popularity upon release, achieving incredibly high review scores across the board, with many praising it for its unrivaled attention to detail and its incredible level of freedom. There were certainly a few complaints, like the game's cars that seemed to light on fire too easily, and the improved, but still slightly clunky controls. But GTA 3 was still considered a masterpiece in game design by most, a reputation that helped it to achieve unprecedented early sales numbers. But as the game skyrocketed to the top of the charts, along with it came a tsunami of controversy. GTA 3's heavy focus on violence and adult themes sparked outrage, as many pointed fingers at the developers and producers for trying to brainwash children into committing crimes, while simultaneously failing to acknowledge its clear satirical nature or even the actual scripted mission objectives.
My general object of this game: kill as many people as you can, get as many stars as you can.
Some even blatantly misrepresented the content, making up features that have never been featured in any GTA game.
You get extra points for shooting somebody in the head as opposed to shooting them in the body. You have to wonder exactly what the value is we're teaching our children.
This is, of course, not the case, as GTA 3 removes the old point systems from the 2D era, and there's never any objective throughout the game that requires players to indiscriminately kill any innocent civilians. If anything, the built-in Most Wanted system actually dissuades overly violent behavior, punishing players for targeting unarmed pedestrians, and preventing them from progressing further until they either let things cool down or are killed and subsequently stripped of their weapons. Even so, the controversy quickly became a hot topic in American politics, with representatives from both sides of the aisle pushing for increased censorship and regulations on video game purchases. But this rapid notoriety had the opposite effect on America's youth, as more and more people became aware of the game's existence, solidifying Grand Theft Auto 3 as one of the most well-known and influential video games of all time.
Every day, I die over and over again. But now,
and you just had to be there for that shit. Yeah, like now, if you go back and play it, it's like, you know, yo, when that shit first came out, man, that shit was new shit. This is the shit, nigga. Oh my god. I don't know, I played it so much and it's, you know, so old now, like, could I play it again and enjoy Grand Theft Auto 3? Probably not. Not as much as the first time, but I think that's how anybody would feel now. And it's a shame, like, these younger kids won't, like, experience that first time playing Grand Theft Auto when the hype was still fresh. Everybody's trying to get a copy of that shit, yo. That shit was crazy. Cause after I played my homeboy's copy, shit, I went out and got my own copy the next day. The next couple days after that, I already knew, like, yo, I'm about to go buy this game. Fuck that shit. Grand Theft Auto, nigga. They had all the rap music on there. If I ain't mistaken, I even think, didn't Eminem have a song on there? Black Rob? Like, yo. Even the soundtrack from Grand Theft Auto 3, yo. If I ain't mistaken, man. There was some hot ass hip hop songs on there.
Immediately following GTA 3's initial PS2 release, DMA Design's core development team commenced work on an expansion pack for the game that would include new vehicles to drive, weapons to shoot, and an extension to the available story missions. But after it became apparent that GTA 3 was a huge success, they decided to turn their attention to developing a full-fledged sequel instead. Before they could do this, there were a few logistical matters to attend to. Rockstar Studios finalized their acquisition of DMA Design, renaming them into Rockstar North, and the last remnants of the Scottish development team were relocated to a new office space in Edinburgh, where they continue to work on Rockstar titles to this day. By early 2002, full production on the next big GTA had begun. All the assets built for the cancelled GTA 3 expansion were then retrofitted for a new 1980s theme. According to an interview by Edge Magazine with Sam Hauser, the 1980s theme was planned well before GTA 3 had even released, but it was cancelled before it entered full production, likely after the low reception. With GTA 3's unprecedented success, they felt the 1980s theme was worth revisiting, and the writing team began extensively researching media related to the time period, most notably Scarface, Carlito's Way, and a complete VHS collection of Michael Mann's Miami Vice. From here, the art team got to work sculpting a drastically different metropolis for players to explore. Aaron Garbett in particular spent a lot of time nailing down the look of the city's iconic architecture, ensuring that the neon outlines would glow along the city skyline. Another major focus for the development team was on delivering a more ambitious story. With GTA 3, DMA Design had always intended to give the lead protagonist full dialogue in order to tell a compelling narrative. But because of their time constraints, they were ultimately forced to drop the idea. Though now that they had a little bit more time to work with and were raking in some serious revenue,
Tony Cipriani
and contacted Ray Liotta to play the lead protagonist.
Oh, that was Ray Liotta.
Along with this, Rockstar also secured the licensing for over 100 era-appropriate songs to be played from the vehicle radios, only further adding to the immersive nature of the experience. Then, after only 9 months of development, Rockstar North released the hotly anticipated sequel, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. GTA Vice City tells the story of Tommy Vercetti, a gangster sent to a fictionalized version of Miami, Florida, to aid in the expansion of the mob's influence during the coke-fueled 1980s. But after a major drug deal is ambushed, Tommy is ordered to track down those responsible or risk deadly retribution from his boss, Sonny Forelli.
You better not be screwing me, Tommy, because you know I'm not a man to be screwed with.
Like with GTA 3, Vice City's story pacing is maintained by the availability of its missions, with players needing to complete basic jobs for low-level crooks before moving up to take down high-profile drug lords and corrupt politicians. However, unlike GTA 3, Vice City's pacing hits a brick wall in its third act, where the game's finale is only made available after successfully purchasing enough business operations around the city and completing their associated side missions. It's a design choice that today would likely be frowned upon, forcing players to complete mundane side activities to artificially lengthen the experience. But remember, this was released back in 2002, so the open-world game design to gamers back then was still pretty fresh and exciting. So much so that players likely already completed enough missions prior to reaching this junction in the story. Even so, this is only a minor pitfall when considering Vice City's impressive new story direction that's more engaging thanks to its fully voiced cutscenes, along with plentiful inspiration from classic 1980s cinema, television, and music. Vercetti's hot-tempered personality, for example, mirrors that of Scarface's lead character, Tony Montana.
Yeah, shut that big mouth of yours. Stop running, you fat slime ball.
And the mansion that Tommy inherits partway through the game is similarly designed after Tony's mansion from the film's last act. An even more obvious reference is Vercetti's lawyer friend, Rosenberg, who both looks and acts just like Sean Penn's character in the film Carlito's Way. There's also a ton of influence from the Miami Vice television series, with character clothing, music choices, and many of the missions being pulled straight from some of the early episodes. In fact, Tommy's friend, Lance Vance, is even voiced by the same actor that played Detective Tubbs back in the 80s, and shares almost the same backstory from the show's first episode.
Oh, wow.
One of Vice City's most endearing qualities is its stylish atmosphere. The developers completely nailed the look and feel of 1980s Miami, at least in how it appears in film and TV. The world is rich in color, with patches of thick ferns and palm trees breaking up series of tan Art Deco structures, while aqua and hot pink neon lights glow along the facades. The game's heads-up display and menus similarly reflect this theme, with a blue and pink color scheme, and all the radio stations and vehicles play hit songs from the 80s, including Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, Toto's Africa, and I Ran by a Flock of Seagulls. On top of the refinements made to the game's story, GTA Vice City also builds upon the well-received gameplay formula from its predecessor, with a brand new environment to explore, lots of new weapons and vehicles, and some increased mission variety. The core gameplay remains mostly the same as before, with only some minor under-the-hood tweaks that aim to polish up GTA 3's rough edges. The player animations, for example, have been cleaned up a bit, making Tommy walk and run more naturally through the world. And the hand-to-hand combat has been redesigned to allow players to engage multiple targets simultaneously. The game's gunplay has also seen some nice changes, with tighter bullet spread and snappier auto-lock mechanics to make the action responsive. On top of this, Vice City also introduces a plethora of new weapons to toy around with. Practically every weapon from GTA 3 returns, like the pistol, the shotgun, Uzi, and sniper rifle. But there's now higher-end alternatives for each of these weapons, including the Python revolver, a SPAS-12 shotgun, a Ruger carbine, and a semi-automatic PSG-1 sniper rifle. The only catch is that players can only carry one of each weapon type, and will need to ditch a corresponding weapon if they want to use something different. For players looking to get up close and personal, lots of new melee weapons have been introduced, most notably a chainsaw that will cause blood to splatter onto the player's screen when used to kill an enemy. Vice City even adds in some new special weapons to the mix, like the M60 light machine gun and the devastating minigun that can absolutely decimate the streets of Vice City. But the police are ready for this, as they've been upgraded to be more aggressive towards the player, and can now deploy things like spike strips that will pop the player's tires and cause them to lose control of their vehicle. Speaking of which, Vice City nearly doubles the number of vehicles over GTA 3, with dozens of new era-appropriate cars, trucks, and boats to race around in, including the return of motorcycles that have been absent from the series ever since the original game. Vice City is also the first entry in the series to introduce pilotable helicopters, along with a plane that doesn't have its wings clipped. And all these new vehicles come in handy as Vice City's environment is tailor-made to take advantage of them all. Alleyways, for example, are sometimes too narrow to pass through in an old car or truck, whereas motorcycles can slip straight through, making them extremely helpful when evading pursuers. And the boats and aircraft become incredibly important in the later half of the game, as players can use them to island hop more easily when trying to earn the coveted 100% completion. The overall level design of Vice City in general just has a more organic flow to it than the often ridge-like structure of Liberty City, giving it a completely new and distinctive feel. What's more, Vice City also houses lots of new storefronts to visit, including restaurants, bars, clubs, shopping malls, pharmacies, and clothing stores, many of which can be robbed at gunpoint. Old storefronts like paint, spray, and ammunition also return, though the latter is more properly realized, requiring players to now speak to the store owner at the counter and purchase weapons directly off the walls. In keeping true with the game's rags-to-riches mentality, players can now purchase additional safe house properties to save their game, and several business ventures that come with their own specific missions to complete and the option to collect a reoccurring monetary kickback from them. All in all, Vice City's gameplay design is a marked improvement over its predecessor. It takes everything that worked about GTA 3, like its open-world structure and its third-person perspective, and builds upon it, with a more realized game world to explore and more things to do within it. Vice City was a huge success. The reception to the game was massively positive. Media outlets praised Vice City for delivering a better sense of story and atmosphere, while also praising the game for its improvements to the gameplay. One of the most common compliments given to the game was its brilliant 1980s Miami setting that helped deliver a distinctive personality that GTA 3 significantly lacked. But it wasn't without its problems. Some reviewers did cite various technical issues that hindered the action, including lengthy loading screens and the aged camera and combat systems. On top of this, Vice City also accumulated its own fair share of controversy, again being used as a scapegoat for violence in modern society. Newsreels portraying Vice City at its most violent quickly dominated the weekly news cycle, villainizing the game and the developers responsible. One group in particular cited a most specific reason for concern, claiming that Vice City's portrayal of Haitian immigrants that make up one of the many criminal factions within the game was detrimental to real-life Haitian Americans, and may incite violence against them. Protests regarding this issue were staged outside of New York City Hall following a report on CBS, eventually prompting Rockstar to add in a disclaimer, adjust some dialogue, and remove all mentions of Haitians or Cubans from later ports of the title. However, this would only be the beginning, as the controversy surrounding the Grand Theft Auto series would only continue to escalate alongside its rapidly growing popularity. In the summer of 2003, 18-year-old Devin Moore was placed under arrest in the state of Alabama for attempting Grand Theft Auto. He was only 18 years old, a recent high school graduate that had no prior history of violence or aggressive behavior. But while being escorted into the police station, Moore stole a handgun from an officer, killed 3 people, and then attempted to flee in a stolen squad car, only to be detained again shortly after. According to the Associated Press, his first response when he was recaptured was, "Life is a video game. Everybody's got to die sometime." The story sent shockwaves through the media, reigniting fierce debates regarding violence placed in video games. And because Moore was identified as being an avid gamer, his legal defense even tried to make a case that games like Grand Theft Auto were to blame for his reprehensible actions. But the judge handling the case dismissed the connection, denying the defense from introducing the games as evidence, and the follow-up civil suit presented on behalf of the victims were similarly thrown out, striking a major blow to anti-violent video game activists. In the following years, Take-Two's legal teams would continue to fend off multiple lawsuits targeting their properties, mainly pertaining to Grand Theft Auto and its violent content, though, as it turns out, it wouldn't be the violence that would get the company into hot water. Meanwhile, back in Edinburgh, the developers at Rockstar North entered into production on a brand new property, hoping to capitalize on their growing reputation among their audience. This project, later given the name Manhunt, was built using mostly the same technology as GTA, though when looking at it, it's understandably difficult to tell. The game is basically the opposite of Grand Theft Auto, with much smaller, restricted spaces, and a far more serious tone, making its extremely violent premise all the more shocking. As expected, it generated some major backlash from anti-violent gaming activists. Though this time, even some members at Rockstar Games felt they might have gone too far, admitting that, at least in GTA, you weren't being forced to perform horrible atrocities. But when reviews started pouring in, praising the game for its excellent stealth action and unique premise, it became clear that Rockstar weren't just chasing after a shock factor, but rather expanding the medium to appeal to the more mature demographic. Though, of course, Manhunt wasn't the only project being worked on by Rockstar North at the time. Grand Theft Auto was still their keystone property after all. So as work was wrapping up on the PC version of Vice City, writers Dan Houser and James Worrell started to draft plans for the third installment. When deciding on the next setting, they agreed early on that the final game in their 3D trilogy would be set in San Andreas, being as it was the only location from the original game yet to receive the 3D treatment. And in keeping with the new precedent they had set with Vice City, they opted to build their story around a distinctive cultural theme, this time the inner city hood life during the early 1990s. As expected, a story about life in the hood, centered around a predominantly black cast characters, was a bold direction for a team of Scottish developers to take, especially a story that was set to use the infamous LA riots as a backdrop to action. So, to ensure that the topic was treated with respect, they also hired rapper, producer, and director Mark Jordan, aka DJ Pooh, who assisted in writing and provided consultation throughout the course of development. Additionally, the entire development team were flown to California to conduct field research in areas they planned to represent, including some of the more dangerous streets in Los Angeles, and then cross-checked architectural designs and landmarks with their New York offices to avoid any time-based errors. When they finally returned, the programmers and art department got to work on their most ambitious environment to date, a map that consisted of not one, but 3 major American cities, and everything in between. Their goal seemed somewhat unobtainable at first. Liberty and Vice City were already gigantic, taking up almost the entire game disk, with frequent load times in between districts. So the programming team came up with an elegant solution. Rather than having all the assets in the world like buildings, vegetation, and decoration load together in giant chunks, a new render pipeline would convert distant objects into lower poly variants, and materialize only when within range of the player. This allowed the art team to hugely expand the scope of the environment, with 3 massive cities only making up a fraction of the playable space. But they also didn't want this space to be empty, so they worked on implementing a new animation scripting interface that could be used to generate hundreds of unique gameplay mechanics and immersive features. Even the lighting system saw some nice improvements, and borrowed lessons learned from the development of Manhunt to incorporate shadows that could be used by the player to hide from enemies. Finally, after an extended 2-year development period, Rockstar Games released the highly anticipated next entry to the series, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, as always for the PS2 first, and the PC and Xbox later. San Andreas kicks off in 1992, in a fictional reimagining of Los Angeles referred to in the game as Los Santos. It tells the story of a young black man named Carl Johnson, who after hearing that his mother was killed in a gang-related shooting, returned back to his home neighborhood to attend her funeral. But he soon learns that things at home are far worse than when he left it, the rival Ballas gang, represented by the purple colors, having taken over most of the hood. On top of this, a unit of the Los Santos PD's Crash Initiative, led by lead antagonist Officer Tenpenny, detain CJ and then blackmail him into completing various odd jobs for them in order to cover up their corruption. Throughout the course of the game's first act, CJ works alongside his Grove Street friends and family to help regain respect in the hood, shutting down crack dealers, executing drive-bys on Ballas, and even helping a wannabe...
The world can do that sucks! Damn!
But right as things seem to be turning around for Grove Street, CJ uncovers a huge conspiracy and is forced into exile beyond city limits. From this point on, the game's narrative begins to resemble past GTA games, with your typical rags-to-riches structure. CJ is introduced to several interesting and often absurd characters as he accumulates significant power and wealth, and drifts from one area of the world to the next, until finally becoming the most powerful man in the state of San Andreas. And the game's finale offers possibly one of the most unique and exciting climactic sequences in the entire series, as the streets of Los Santos erupt with mass rioting, mirroring the real-life LA riots of 1992. In addition to other real-world events from that time, San Andreas also draws significant inspiration from 90s hip-hop culture and hood films like Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood. and features an even more star-studded cast than Vice City, including Chris Ballard, Ice-T, Peter Fonda, Chris Penn, David Cross, James Woods, and Samuel L. Jackson. Even by today's standards, that's a lot of star power for a video game, some of whom play hugely important roles throughout the narrative. And when compared to Vice City, San Andreas tells a much more engaging story, with improved cutscenes, better written characters, and a much more unique plot, breaking away from cliched mafia movie references to give players a totally new experience. When it comes to its gameplay design, San Andreas offers a significant number of changes, putting on aspects that worked well before while also adding new features to further immerse the player. The core gameplay remains the same as the past two games, though there are a few long-requested features to round out CJ's abilities. Players can finally swim in bodies of water for the first time, unlike before where touching the water would instantly kill the player. And short walls can now be vaulted over, making traversal on foot through alleyways and backyards more practical. The game's gunplay has also received some nice improvements, incorporating an even more responsive auto-lock aim system, along with a new colored crosshair to telegraph the target's health status. Players can also crouch to increase their weapon stability, perform combat rolls, and sneak up on unsuspecting hostiles for stealth takedowns, similar to the stealth systems used in Manhunt. Most of the weapons available in San Andreas share fundamental similarities to the weapons we saw in Vice City, with 2 to 3 variants for each weapon type, and more or less the same balancing between them all. There are some newcomers to the arsenal though, like the Winchester rifle, a heat-seeking rocket launcher, remote explosives, and additional hardware like parachutes and night vision goggles. The vehicles have also been improved, better handling and superior damage models. But it's the increase to the number of available vehicles that's most impressive here, with tons more cars, boats, and aircraft, along with a few more absurd options like hovercraft, go-karts, and the famous jetpack. The biggest and most blatantly obvious improvement San Andreas offers, though, is the extreme increase to the environmental scale. San Andreas isn't one city, it's an entire state, and it's filled with way more variety than anything the series has ever offered. The first area, Los Santos, is a large concrete jungle, with a maze of ghetto neighborhoods that act as an urban war zone. North of this is the rural countryside of Wright County, that's loaded with tall mountains, thick forests, and winding rivers, along with plenty of redneck farmers, doped hippies, and roaming biker gangs. Further northwest, there's the game's second major city, San Fierro, that features lots of vertical thanks to its steep roadways, along with plenty of opportunities for naval action out in the bay. In the top half of the game's map, there's Bone County, a vast desert region home to several small towns and airfields, and a highly secure top-secret military base called Area 69. And finally, there's the Las Venturas Strip, where players can burn all their money on slot machines and card tables, only to make it all back in a daring casino heist. The sheer size and diversity available in San Andreas' playable space greatly dwarfs that of previous entries in the series combined. And what's even more impressive is that this wide-reaching landmass is also chock full of things to do. First, there's the main missions, that seem to function the same as always. Players enter a mission marker, watch a cutscene, and then complete a series of objectives. But each mission does a better job of setting itself apart, with new scripted action set-piece moments and unique gameplay features introduced at a steady pace all throughout the length of the campaign. Early on, players perform relatively simple tasks like fighting gangsters, stealing cars, and robbing storefronts. But as the world begins to open up, the scale and general absurdity becomes more and more apparent, with players needing to navigate remote-controlled planes, burn down platforms with a flamethrower, and even drive a motorcycle into the back of a cargo plane as it's taking off from an airstrip. But its attempt to stay at least somewhat grounded helps preserve its charm. Next, there's the optional open-world activities, many of which are specific to certain parts of the game world. In Los Santos, for example, players can roam the streets spraying graffiti tags and fighting for control of territory in gang wars. The Los Santos map is broken up into distinct territory blocks, with each color representing a different gang. And venturing into a rival territory can sometimes be deadly, especially when wearing the wrong colors. The player's goal is to try and conquer as many of these areas as possible for the Green Brook Street family. This is accomplished by traveling into enemy turf and killing waves of enemy gangsters, and then defending any conquered territory from retaliatory strikes. To sell the fantasy further, players can recruit gang members using their earned influence throughout the campaign, and can even perform group drive-bys just like the ones in the 90s good films that the game tries to emulate. Another big addition to San Andreas is its new role-playing mechanics. Players can now fully customize the look and appearance of the game's protagonist, with businesses like barbershops, tattoo parlors, and several different clothing shops, each with an explorable interior and distinctive clothing styles. Players can also visit restaurants and choose from different food items on the menu to restore their health, but need to carefully balance this with regular exercise at the gym to maintain their stamina and strength, or risk CJ getting too fat or too thin. Players also need to maintain their driving and shooting stats by visiting schools and ranges to brush up on their skills, and can learn new techniques like fighting styles depending on their skill level. San Andreas also introduces a new girlfriend dating system, allowing players to befriend specific female characters and bring them out on dates, who will react to the player's driving speed and choice of restaurant, with a fun meter determining whether or not they want to be romantically involved with CJ after being dropped off back home. Other new open-world activities include mini-games like basketball, pool, and gambling, new business-based missions, home invasions, lots of new race types, lowrider challenges, demolition derbies, photography, dancing, BMXing. Simply put, there's a ridiculous amount of stuff to do in this game, way more than anything the series has provided before, making it the ultimate open-world sandbox experience. And as you can probably already guess, the response to it was overwhelmingly positive. San Andreas received even higher review scores than Vice City did, with critics applauding Rockstar for the remarkable attention to detail, all crammed into a single dual-layered DVD. Gamers everywhere praised the game for its hours of entertainment, coupled with a more engaging plot and interesting environment. And some, like GameSpot, even claimed that it was the best game in the series. San Andreas went on to sell well over 2 million copies in the first week, greatly outpacing Vice City before it, and not only became the best-selling game of 2004, but eventually became the best-selling game ever made for the PlayStation 2. Though, as with every Grand Theft Auto release, not everyone was happy. A few critics called out Rockstar for their aging visual design, and criticized the title for its poorly implemented mini-games. Some even knocked the game for its depiction of the LA riots in the finale, faulting it for completely ignoring the racial discrimination that led up to the actual real-world events. But the biggest controversy, and the one that would ultimately begin San Andreas' most enduring legacy in pop culture, was the infamous Hot Coffee mod. The Hot Coffee mod, if you somehow haven't already heard about it, was a fan-made modification introduced into the PC version of San Andreas a year after the game released. The mod unlocks an unused minigame that inexplicably made its way into the final code, where players could directly control CJ while having consensual sex with one of his many girlfriends. When news of this secret gameplay feature broke in 2005, all hell was let loose. Immediately, US politicians on both sides of the aisle condemned Rockstar and the ESRB rating system for failing to notify users of the adult-only content. Senator Hillary Clinton in particular pushed for legislation to be passed to further restrict access to adult themes in gaming, threatening to greatly limit game distribution with hefty fines and other penalties.
We are determined to stop a situation in which video games with pornographic and violent content are being peddled to our children.
Rockstar argued against the allegations, claiming that by modifying their game code, the client had violated the terms agreement. But upon further investigation, the ESRB confirmed that the code was indeed still included in early copies of the game. And as a result, Rockstar issued a patch and re-released the game with the content removed, though a minuscule number of consumers actually took them up on their recall offer. And this was only the start. Rockstar also faced a wave of class action lawsuits, resulting in losses of tens of millions of dollars. The Hot Coffee controversy marked the first major loss for Rockstar. To this day, it's still unclear how the minigame made its way into the code. But whatever the reason, the Hot Coffee mod proved that the Grand Theft Auto series wasn't invincible, and Rockstar North would be sure to thank the Senator for concern about America's youth with a fitting tribute in the future. In the years following San Andreas' incredible success, Rockstar North saw a major expansion to its staff size. The team had remained fairly small throughout GTA's 3D era, but with next-generation consoles looming on the horizon, and the promise of delivering more than just GTA games in the future, Rockstar saw fit to expand, and move their studio to a larger space near Calton Hill. Meanwhile, Take-Two continued their ambitious expansion, picking up studios and transforming them into new proprietary 2K offices, along with additional studios under Rockstar Games. One such studio was a British portable game developer called Mobius Entertainment, who were responsible for a Game Boy Advance version of Remedy's first Max Payne title in 2003. Impressed by how this portable Max Payne game turned out, Take-Two purchased Mobius Entertainment, transforming them into Rockstar Leeds, and assigned them a project to create a similar handheld experience for the Grand Theft Auto property. But after seeing the potential in Sony's recently unveiled PlayStation Portable, they reassigned the Leeds team to start working on a PSP title instead, and handed off the Game Boy project to a third-party developer named Digital Eclipse, resulting in 2004's Grand Theft Auto Advance. GTA Advance takes place in the year 2000, 1 year after the events of GTA 3. Players assume the role of Mike, a typical low-life thug, who, along with his buddy Vinny, is looking to earn enough cash before leaving the country for good. But right as they're about to leave, Vinny's car explodes, along with all the money they had collected, and Mike vows to find those responsible and avenge his fallen friend. Throughout his vengeful journey, Mike meets up with plenty of other low-life criminals in Liberty City, including a few returning faces from GTA 3, and he proceeds to complete various jobs for them to get closer to the ultimate truth. Unlike its 3D counterparts, GTA Advance doesn't feature any voice acting or motion capture cinematics, resorting to still image cutscenes and text bubbles instead. Though the mission structure established with GTA 3 does remain intact, meaning players can visit markers on their minimap for specific characters that they meet and steadily grow their influence around town. And all this is accomplished through the lens of the returning top-down perspective, along with a few other caveats to account for the Game Boy Advance's weaker specs. It's easily one of the least visually appealing titles in the entire franchise, with a limited color palette, flat environments, and some archaic animation designs. But the level layout introduced in GTA 3 is more or less included, and even features a few extensions to areas like the Western Island. Grand Theft Auto Advance even manages to squeeze in the optional vehicle-specific gig jobs like taxi fares, giving it a leg up over the classic top-down GTA games. But it's otherwise a basic and forgettable experience that failed to impress, and its resulting sales and reviews quickly reflected this, with many knocking the game for its poor visuals, boring soundtrack, and outdated controls. Though, fortunately for the Grand Theft Auto series, GTA Advance wouldn't be its last foray into the world of portable gaming. As Digital Eclipse took the heat for the first poorly received GTA game in years, work proceeded at the Leeds studio on another original Grand Theft Auto experience, built to harness the untapped potential of Sony's new PlayStation Portable. But to pull this off right, the devs at Leeds would need some help. So they reached out to Rockstar North, who let them borrow hundreds of assets and code that they then retrofitted to work within the confines of the PSP's capabilities. What's more, they even had Rockstar veterans like producer Leslie Benzies, lead artist Aaron Garbett, and writers Dan Houser and James Worrell all reprised their respective developmental roles to ensure it delivered the signature Rockstar-level polish fans had come to expect. Then, after a little over a year of full development, Liberty City Stories, exclusively for the PlayStation Portable. Liberty City Stories, as the title suggests, brings players back to the hustle and bustle of Liberty City, 3 years prior to the events of Grand Theft Auto 3. Only this time, instead of tearing up the streets as Cloud, players assume the role of returning Italian gangster Tony Cipriani, who fans of GTA 3 may recognize as the mission giver with the less-than-brief mother living upstairs.
Tony? Where the hell have you been? Why so cool all the time you were away?
The story kicks off in 1998, with Tony returning home after being told to lay low for a while. In his absence, the Leone family, led by Don Salvatore Leone, had steadily been growing their influence throughout the city, and have set up shop in Eastside Portland to break into the prostitution and gambling rackets in the area. Tony, eager to jump in where he left off, is instead stuck working from the bottom all over again, slowly earning back his reputation to get in good with the boss. But as he rises the ranks of the Mafia, he's thrust into a three-way gang war between the other families in the city, and the resulting fallout helps to shape Liberty City into how it appears in GTA 3. When stacked up to GTA's past two mainline entries, Liberty City Stories plays things a bit safe. The general plot bears some heavy resemblance to your typical American gangster movie, with the most obvious inspiration being Coppola's The Godfather. Though having a fully voiced lead protagonist does help to deliver a more focused plot structure than the last time players visited Liberty City, and to have all this delivered into a completely handheld experience was, and still is, pretty impressive. But even more impressive than this is the way Liberty City Stories preserves GTA's iconic open-world gameplay design. This isn't just a top-down spin-off with some mundane delivery missions. This is a full-fledged 3D-era GTA experience, tailor-made to take advantage of the PSP's hardware capabilities. Tony moves and behaves just like his mainline console counterparts, with the ability to run around the streets of Liberty City, steal cars, shoot bad guys, and perform drive-bys. The only caveat is that the PSP doesn't come with the right joystick, so the game camera can no longer be controlled manually while moving the player. Instead, players must rely on the game's more aggressive auto-center camera design, or optionally, hold down an aim button to switch the left thumb pad to control the camera instead of the movement. This is obviously not ideal, as trying to dodge bullets and keep track of where they're coming from can be difficult, but the improved auto-aim does help make the gameplay more tolerable. Liberty City Stories also does make use of any of the new mechanics introduced in San Andreas, harking back to the slightly simpler design of Vice City instead. This means there's no swimming, no wedge vaulting, and all the complex RPG systems and minigames are stripped away. Though features that were introduced in Vice City, like motorcycles, unique weapon sets, and different character clothes, do help to make this return trip to Liberty City more engaging. Liberty City Stories also sees the return of online multiplayer to the series, albeit only between 6 players over a wireless ad hoc mode. Still, even so, this would be the very first time the series would offer a legitimate 3D online multiplayer experience in Grand Theft Auto, something that, as you probably already know, has become a pretty big part of the series since. Liberty City Stories was highly regarded by fans. Reviewers credited Rockstar Leeds for how much they managed to squeeze into Sony's handheld, especially the full Liberty City map. The graphics are obviously not quite as good as the console counterparts, with the draw distance often pointed out as a technical drawback, but it's otherwise a legitimate 3D-era GTA experience. In fact, it even received a re-release on PlayStation 2 in 2006, with superior visuals and a more traditional control scheme. But its real contribution was to the PSP, convincing gamers that the device could deliver true console-level experiences on the go. It quickly dominated game sales for the device, and because of this success, Rockstar Games were quick to greenlight a follow-up. After work on Liberty City had wrapped, Rockstar Leeds kicked off production on a sequel, this time letting players carry the beloved sun-soaked streets of Vice City in their pockets. Development for the sequel took considerably less time to complete, as most of the hard work in bringing the renderware engine to function on the PSP had already been accomplished prior. Though now that the developers were working on a title post-San Andreas, they were able to incorporate more of its updated gameplay mechanics features, while also throwing in a few brand new ideas to help their project stand out. And within only a year of development, Rockstar Leeds released their second entry to the GTA series, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, first exclusive to PSP, and then again on the PS2 a year later. Like with the last game, Vice City Stories is a prequel to its 2003 counterpart that helps to piece together events prior to Tommy Vercetti's rise to power. Players this time assume the role of Vic Vance, an honest military man just looking to earn some money to help pay for his brother's medical treatment. But after being reassigned to work on a military base for the corrupt Sergeant Martinez, he's caught up in some questionable activities, and is later caught and dishonorably discharged. Now, out of options, Vance turns to a life of crime, trafficking guns, drugs, and involving himself in a massive turf war between the Cubans, the Cholos, and the Trailer Park Mafia. But it's when Vic's brother, Lance Vance, comes to town that things start to really get out of hand, as the duo get ensnared in a cocaine-fueled conflict with the notorious Mendez brothers. It's once again a competent rags-to-riches storyline that does a great job of paying homage to classic action films and Ace music, while setting up the events for its mainline console counterpart. Though its far more compelling main protagonist and better writing really shows, setting it far apart from its Liberty City predecessor. This release also features some improvements in gameplay mechanics. For the most part, Vice City Stories handles a lot like Liberty City Stories, with the same awkward camera toggle to make up for the single thumb pad, and the D-pad helping to make up for the lack of click of thumbsticks and rear triggers. However, many features introduced in San Andreas have finally returned, like swimming, flying, and riding bicycles. Vice City Stories also introduces a few of its own new features to the formula, most notably the ability to capture and maintain criminal rackets. Throughout the game world, there are several small fenced-off shacks, usually with a single vehicle parked outside. If the player blows up this vehicle, they initiate a hostile takeover, where they need to defend against waves of angry gangsters looking to protect their assets. Upon successfully defeating these enemies, players assume control of that business, and can complete asset missions to help increase their revenue. It's sort of a hybrid of Vice City's property ownership systems and the gang wars introduced in San Andreas. Simple objectives attached to them make the criminal racket missions the perfect fit for a portable handheld. Other new features include a new vehicle-based side mission that lets players serve as a lifeguard, and the ability to repurchase confiscated weapons after being killed or arrested, along with several technical enhancements over Liberty City Stories. Vice City Stories was even more successful than its predecessor, earning higher average review scores and generating significantly more sales. With it, Rockstar leads and pushed the boundaries for portable gaming even further, delivering a nearly flawless port of the 3D Grand Theft Auto experience, up to par with the hugely popular Vice City and San Andreas. Its story was also praised, as it helped deliver a much more interesting protagonist, with far more personality and character than the cookie-cutter Italian mobster from before. With this release, Rockstar leads were successful in delivering on their initial promise of a title that would smash expectations of portable gaming. Though, instead of completing the trifecta with the San Andreas stories, they turned their attention to other Rockstar properties instead, including a PSP port of Rockstar Toronto's The Warriors a year later. And with that, the 3D era of the Grand Theft Auto series finally came to an end. While all of this was going on, the core dev team up north were gearing up for the next major step in Grand Theft Auto's evolution. For the past 6 years, they had made liberal use of the Renderware engine for practically all of their games. By 2004, Electronic Arts purchased Criterion, along with the rights for the Renderware technology. This caused a major ripple in the industry, as most games developed for the Sony PlayStation 2 were built using this engine. And some developers, like Illusion Softworks, were even forced to restart development of their planned Mafia 2. This wasn't the case with everyone, though. For the first few years following the acquisition, Rockstar's UK-based studios were permitted to continue using the engine in accordance with their pre-existing contracts, allowing them to create San Andreas and the 2 PSP games. Though, after these projects were completed, it became clear that the next entry to the Grand Theft Auto series would need to leave Renderware behind. This is where Angel Studios entered the picture. Angel Studios was a San Diego-based software development studio founded by Diego Angel in 1984. The studio had a slow start, worked on various computer animation contract jobs with minimal revenue for years, until they finally made some headway working on games for Microsoft and Nintendo in the mid-90s. In the early 2000s, Angel Studios entered into a partnership with Rockstar Games and created racing games like Midnight Club and Smuggler's Run, using their own proprietary technology called the Angel Engine. And following the success of those 2 titles, Take-Two Interactive acquired them and renamed them into Rockstar San Diego, where they then went on to create a second Midnight Club and a linear action shooter set in the Wild West called The Dead Revolver. In 2004, Rockstar San Diego became a critical component of Rockstar's continued success as a company. Now that EA owned Renderware, the other Rockstar teams needed a new platform to build off of. So Rockstar San Diego established a team of programmers to create a next-gen version of their Angel Engine, capable of improved rendering, lighting, and, with the help of third-party technologies like Euphoria, incredibly lifelike physics computation, resulting in the aptly named Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, or RAGE for short. This new engine was first showcased in a basic table tennis game created by Rockstar San Diego. But it wasn't until Rockstar North got their hands on the technology that the potential of what they had created would become fully realized. Now equipped with a suitable replacement engine, Rockstar North initiated work on their most ambitious new Grand Theft Auto since the original leap to 3D. According to Aaron Garbett, the goal for this new entry was to focus only on the series' most fundamental aspects, and then build around them with an unprecedented amount of detail, to really drive home that this was a new era for the series. Because of this, the writers decided that it would be appropriate to return to Liberty City once again, only this time, the recreation of New York would be more authentic, and capture the extreme level of detail that players expected on new-gen consoles. As usual, Rockstar sent out a team to New York for field research, where they recorded videos of traffic patterns and captured hundreds of thousands of photos, and supplemented this with additional support from the head Rockstar game headquarters. Upon their return, the artists broke up into individual teams, each focusing on their own distinct area of the map. ensuring that everything from the buildings to the way people looked and behaved was unique enough to give the city a true-to-life feel. Adding to the authenticity was the extreme new level of detail afforded to them by the more powerful engine and development kits. Artists with architectural backgrounds helped to sculpt the facades of every building, while character designers made use of a special image metrics technology that allowed them to more properly telegraph characters' body language. Another major focus tackled early on was on redesigning the series' poorly aged combat systems. The 3D era combat, while serviceable, just wouldn't cut it for the experience Rockstar North were aiming for. So the team began to incorporate a more responsive auto-targeting system along with a new snap-to-cover mechanic that had become increasingly more popular after the release of Epic's Gears of War. Meanwhile, the writers had their own set of challenges to overcome. For the longest time, the story in Grand Theft Auto games had always felt like an afterthought, with some brief animated sequences before and after missions, with no real emotional tie to any one character. So, with the jump to next gen, lead writer Dan Houser sought to fix this problem and deliver something more meaningful and thought-provoking. Games had come a long way in the 2000s, with titles like Mafia and Metal Gear Solid proving the value of character development and mature themes. However, Dan never considered those games to be in competition with the likes of Grand Theft Auto, and instead looked to film as a benchmark. And now that the technology had caught up, he felt he could finally tell the style of story he always wanted to without resorting to cheap gags or lazy parody. Rockstar also abandoned their dependency on major Hollywood talent to deliver the dialogue, feeling that having known celebrities would detract from the realism of the experience, and so they hired several unknown actors that better suited each respective role. Finally, after 3 years of full development, the next generation of Grand Theft Auto arrived, and Rockstar released Grand Theft Auto 4 for both the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in the spring of 2008, with a follow-up PC release later that same year. GTA 4 follows the story of Niko Bellic, a vengeful Eastern European ex-soldier who arrives in Liberty City on board an old cargo ship called the Platypus. Upon disembarking, he's greeted by his eccentric cousin, Roman Bellic, who had bragged to Niko for years about his incredible success in America. However, as Niko soon learns, Roman may have exaggerated a bit about his accomplishments, and is actually just a failed cab business owner living in a dirty studio apartment in one of the poor areas of the city.
So, you full of crap or what? What?
To make matters worse, Niko discovers that Roman's fiancée is possibly involved with another man, to which Niko violently responds, setting off a chain of events that eventually lead the two cousins to be pursued by the Russian mafia. Throughout the course of his journey, Niko establishes friendships with many diverse characters, including a Jamaican drug and weapons dealer, Little Jacob,
Yeah.
a steroid junkie and image-obsessed Brucey,
I got you, man.
and the volatile McCreary brothers, most of whom deliver their own distinct set of missions throughout the campaign.
Well, none of you worry about nothing. We're here for the bank's money. It's going to a greater cause. Shut up and handle the safe.
And all these characters are expanded upon further through extended conversations during long car rides that differ on repeat playthroughs. The game's narrative also paints a much less romanticized portrait of criminal life in America, most of the characters Niko interacts with having some sort of drug addiction, often leading them to make poorly thought decisions that either get them caught or killed. Even Niko, who remains mostly neutral with the people he meets in Liberty City, is still haunted by his past life, and finds himself relentlessly tormented by his desire for vengeance.
Maybe that is no excuse. Wrong? Roman! Are you sleeping, you fat? Come on!
Niko's immigrant background also plays an important role in the story's delivery, giving players an exaggerated perspective of America's post-9/11 hysteria and how it applies to an unobtainable American dream. Though that's not to say GTA 4 is all serious. There's still plenty of sexual innuendos, social commentary, and cinematic parodies all throughout a lengthy 30-some-hour campaign, including an intense bank robbery sequence ripped straight from the finale of Michael Mann's Heat. But even so, the story feels more mature than any of Rockstar's past work, setting the tone for more gritty and adult themes to follow. Then there's the environment. Liberty City, as it's portrayed in Grand Theft Auto 4, is a completely different beast than any of its early incarnations. It's not just a series of repetitive neighborhoods with one or two familiar intersections anymore, but rather a massive parody of Manhattan Island and its surrounding boroughs. There's Central Park, Flushing Meadows, Coney Island, the Washington Square Arch, Rockefeller Center, Times Square, and even the Statue of Liberty out in the harbor. That's modified a bit to pay tribute to one of Rockstar's bigger things. What's even more impressive is the unbelievable attention to detail that developers crammed into every inch of this city. The streets of the HD-era Liberty City are densely populated with loads of varied NPCs going about their daily lives, taking cabs, eating food, throwing trash out of their car windows, and even pulling out umbrellas during the occasional rainstorm. The game's new physics system only furthers GTA 4's more immersive feel, with countless environmental props that dynamically react to outside influence. Trash lining the sidewalks, for example, will roll across the ground when kicked by characters, and can even be picked up and tossed as a weapon. Weak surfaces and objects can be torn to shreds with automatic gunfire, sometimes opening new points for attack. And vehicles feature a soft-body physics system, allowing them to deform and contort in endless ways, all dependent on the amount of force applied. Even the NPCs have physics applied to them, stumbling backwards when shoved and rolling across the ground when hit by a vehicle. They even have a new injured state, where they'll reach for wounds and try to crawl for safety. Even by today's standards, the AI in Grand Theft Auto 4 is impressive. But it's not the only thing this game contributed to the series. In keeping with the precedent set by San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto 4's world offers plenty of fun activities to participate in outside of the Make West line. Minigames like arcade machines and billiards return, along with new experiences like bowling, darts, and comedy clubs. There's even a fully integrated internet browser, accessible through computers at internet cafes, with a full network of fictional websites all parroting things like dating sites, politically fueled news outlets, and nonsense conspiracies. For players that just want a day off, they can stay in their apartment and turn on the TV, crank up the volume and swap between different television programs, all fully animated and flanked by commercial breaks and references to other locations in the Grand Theft Auto universe. GTA 4 is also the first game in the series to make use of an on-screen cell phone menu, and players can use it at any time to contact different characters, read text messages, set up appointments, and even launch seamlessly into an included multiplayer mode, while further adding to the immersion. Which brings us to Grand Theft Auto 4's most infamous new feature, the friendships.
Hey Nico, it's Roman. Let's go on.
The friendship system is an evolution of San Andreas' girlfriend system. The players need to maintain a relationship with a character by taking them out on dates and keeping them happy. Only this new iteration is a little bit more involved, with 10 different characters, each with their own preference in activities, food, clothing, and vehicles to ride around in. By regularly treating a character to their favorite things, players will grow their relationship status with them, and eventually unlock special favors that can be called upon using an option under the phone contact. It's a very unique and ambitious feature that aims to further immerse players into Nico's world, though trying to consistently maintain all the relationships can be a bit much, especially when certain characters keep calling at the worst possible times.
Nico, it's Roman. We should go and get drunk together.
Roman, I'm nervous enough about driving a truck full of explosives around the city for Mikhail Faust. Anyway, I'm sorry, but if I get drunk with you and then drive this thing, I'll definitely blow myself up. I'll catch you later.
GTA 4 also sees quite a bit of an overhaul to its core gameplay mechanics as well. Because everything was built from the ground up on the new Rage engine, the player model doesn't move quite the same as he did in the 3D era. Acceleration is now more gradual to simulate forward momentum, and thanks to the implementation of the Euphoria physics simulation, Nico can topple over and ragdoll just like the rest of the game's NPCs, which makes for some painful looking tumbles, especially when hit by a vehicle. The driving systems have received similar updates. Cars have a feeling of genuine weight now, forcing players to think twice before drifting around corners. And a new suspension tick system allows the body of the car to independently move based on the car's momentum, while each tire responds to the various elevated surfaces. The damage models that I mentioned earlier can even impact the vehicle's tires, making some cars unusable if they sustain enough damage. Other changes include new window braking and hot wiring animations when stealing parked vehicles, a free aim drive-by button that is compatible with SMGs, handguns, and grenades, and even the ability to catapult Nico through the windshield in a head-on collision, discouraging reckless driving. Then, of course, there's the combat. The combat was a major focus for the development team, as they really wanted to clean up what has always been GTA's weakest component. And with GTA 4, the series finally begins to resemble more traditional third-person combat systems today. The auto-aim system from the past few games does return, though enemy health is now represented by a series of circle-oriented notches that will deplete as more damage is dealt. This is so far just like how the other games handled it, but what sets GTA 4's aiming apart is that players can now use the right joystick to fine-tune their aim and move the circular crosshair along the enemy to target specific body parts. Shooting an enemy in the leg, for example, will cause them to trip and fall, while shooting them in the arm will cause them to drop their weapon, and shooting them in the head will always guarantee an instant kill, assuming they aren't wearing protective headgear. This system ensures that the game remains fully accessible for newcomers, as they can still continue to easily target other maps, while also providing more nuance for players to master, something that becomes extremely important during some of the more challenging combat encounters later in the game. This is then coupled with a new cover system. Like most third-person shooters today, players in GTA 4 can tap the cover button to have Nico rush for the nearest corner or low object to duck down behind. From here, players move Nico safely into position and either pop up to fire again, or blind fire their weapon with reduced accuracy. What sets this apart from other cover shooters, though, is that the system by which Nico connects to cover is fully dynamic and procedurally based, meaning anything that looks like it might protect the player will protect the player. This ensures that every environment is not built to look like an unbelievable maze of low walls, and encourages players to experiment with each battle to find effective points of attack. It's a huge step forward for the GTA series, with lots of exciting moments thrown in thanks to the increased amount of scripted set pieces during missions. And when combined with a more immersive environment and more realistic driving model, it really does feel like a true next-generation leap. But not everything from the 3D era made this next-gen leap. Property ownership, for example, is limited to pre-designated apartments, and cars can no longer be customized, save for the random paint job assigned when visiting a pay and spray. Most of vehicle-based side missions, like firefighting and being a paramedic, are also absent, though the popular vigilante missions do return, with a surprisingly robust police database system built directly into each cop car. Speaking of cops, GTA 4 also redesigns how the police response behaves. If the player is wanted by the police, a flashing red and blue circle will appear around the player's cursor on the radar, indicating where the police have made contact. If the player can safely exit the zone without being followed, then the search will be called off shortly after. The catch to this is that with each additional wanted level, the zone gets bigger, with 6 stars covering up nearly a quarter of the entire map. Though, even at 6 stars, the police aren't quite as aggressive as they used to be, and will no longer call in the army, relying instead on lots of SWAT trucks, helicopters, and government agents to put Nico down. However, considering the size of Liberty City streets and the way players can duck into alleyways and play hide-and-seek with the cops, the improvements seem to far outweigh the few items that were removed. Finally, there's GTA 4's online multiplayer. This part of the game, that has since been shut down, previously allowed players to establish a peer-to-peer lobby with chosen parameters, and launch into the world with their friends or anyone else that joined. Lobby options included game modes like races, death matches, cooperative missions, and a special Cops and Robbers adversary match. Though the most common choice was the free mode option, where players could just roam Liberty City without any limitations, stealing from NPCs, fighting the police, and getting into unscripted trouble. It was an incredible experience back in 2009, as online gaming on consoles had finally become the norm. Though it's understandably not as exciting by today's standards. There was nothing to actually do in this multiplayer free mode, outside of killing each other and the random NPCs. Players couldn't even customize their character all that much, with only a few clothing styles and body types available to select between in the menus. Though, despite its aged design, it was still a revolutionary next step for the series that would help to set the stage for the series' future. When all is said and done, GTA 4 was a masterpiece. It received overwhelmingly positive reviews, with scores across the board averaging at or above 98%, and to this day, still remains the highest rated entry to the entire Grand Theft Auto franchise. Common praise included the game's compelling narrative, its incredibly lifelike feel, and its unprecedented attention to detail. Others specifically praised GTA 4 for the quality of the voice acting and writing of its lead protagonist, Bill Bellic, whose hybrid of charming personality and vicious psychopath made him an instant fan favorite. Along with its positive reception, GTA 4 also saw an incredible amount of success in regards to its sales numbers, selling well over 6 million copies within the first week. and smashing records as the fastest selling video game of all time. But despite all its success, GTA 4 still had its fair share of criticism, mostly directed towards the Roblox.
Oh yeah, it's getting there. Slowly but surely. Yo, appreciate y'all chilling in the stream. I'll catch y'all tomorrow.